You guys wanted to know my top 10 favorite series of all time, and I have delivered. Here are my top 10 favorite series of all time as of right now in 2025, in the year of our Lord. There's a lot of discussion here on BookTube about whether or not it is a good thing that everyone's top 10 list looks very similar. Is that a problem? I don't know, but if you're one of those people that thinks that is a problem, I think you'll be quite happy with my list because there's a lot of hidden gems on here, and I think perhaps only 5 or 6 series that you even heard of. So I think there will be some good surprises. And because it is BookTube, I have 5 honorable mentions that I'm going to start off the video with. These honorable mentions would have been in the number 10 spot if nostalgia did not blind me. So let's get right into it. It doesn't need to be said, but this is my list. If your favorite series are not on this list, I probably didn't read them. And even if I did read them and they're not on the list, I'm sorry. We have different taste. The first honorable mention is The Hollow Kingdom duology by Kira Jane Buxton. This is a zombie apocalypse story told from the point of view of the animals that are left behind. They are irreverent, hilarious, and they are filled with heartfelt moments about guardianship and parenthood and sacrifice and what it means to be human, which is all the more surprising because the main protagonist of this series is a domesticated crow. I love it. It's hilarious. Why is it not in the number 10 spot? Well, it's a duology. Do duologies even truly count as series? I don't think so. That being said, these 2 books in this duology are amongst my favorite books of all time. It's hard for me to put into words how much I love this duology, especially considering that I did not think the sequel needed to be written, and that was until I read the sequel, and I read it, and I loved it almost as much as the first. I really hope Kira Jane Buxton decides to write a 3rd book in the series. She totally can. The 2nd book ends on a bit of a cliffhanger, a little open-ended. It's definitely possible, but I fear she has moved on. This duology just barely doesn't make my top 10. The second honorable mention is Blackwater by Michael McDowell. This is a Southern Gothic masterpiece, and it made my list of top 10 favorite books of all time. That being said, it is technically 6 books, 6 small novels, that has been collected into a single collection, but in my mind, I really consider it a standalone. That is why this did not make my top 10 list of series. But if you want to hear more about this book, watch my top 10 favorite books of all time video. This one makes an appearance. The third honorable mention is Alex Marshall's Crimson Empire trilogy. The first installment is A Crown for Cold Silver. I love this book. I've read the first 2 books in the trilogy. I have not finished the trilogy, and nostalgia is the only reason it makes it into my honorable mentions. I'm rereading the 2nd book in the next 2 weeks or so. I'm going to start it, and I'm going to finally finish the trilogy that got me into reading fantasy as an adult. It is like Game of Thrones on acid. Lots of characters, lots of point of view characters, lots of political machinations, conflicts between church and state. There's demons, there's magic. There's a character named Hortrap the Touch. It's a very dark, grimdark, unserious, humorous story, and I can't wait to see how it ends. Perhaps when I finish the trilogy, it'll make it into the top 10, but as of right now, it's only an honorable mention. Honorable mention number 4 is Jack Townsend's Tales from the Gas Station. This quartet is a fever dream. It's very hard to explain. It tells the story of Jack, a lonely, terminally ill gas station clerk who works at the strangest gas station of all time. A lot of weird things happen in this small town, and the gas station is at the center of it all. There's a cult that lives in the wood. There's eldritch gods. There's government conspiracies. There's mutants. There's ghosts. There's aliens. There's everything. And they're all meeting at the nexus of this gas station, and it's such a strange fever dream of a story. I love Jack. I love the humor of these books. It would have been ranked higher on my list if every single installment did not start off in such a lackluster way. The endings of all these books, I love them. The stories really build to a head, and the climaxes are always humorous and interesting and engaging. Every installment of this series ends in a way that answers so many questions, but brings a lot more questions to the surface. It's a very confusing story. I love the humor. I love the episodic nature. I love the supporting cast of characters. I love how it plays around with alternate timelines and a lot of other weird things. It's a good time, but it just barely doesn't make my top 10. My last honorable mention is The Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells. You've probably heard of this series. It has taken BookTube, Book Talk, the internet by storm. We just got a TV adaptation, and the TV adaptation was really dang good. In my opinion, it is better than the books so far. Time shall tell. This series would have made my top 10 if I didn't enjoy the first arc so much more than the second arc. I find the second arc of Murderbot Diaries that the author is currently writing to be a little tedious and meandering. And that makes sense because the first 5 installments of this series are novellas, and the more recent installments are novels. They're longer. And I think Martha Wells, the pacing is better in these installments when the books are shorter. I love Murderbot, I love art, I love the supporting cast of characters, but I really miss the episodic nature of the first arc of Murderbot. I loved Murderbot finding his way around the galaxy, discovering what it means to have free will, discovering what it means to be an individual. Murderbot is amongst the most human protagonists you will ever follow, which is funny because he's a cyborg who has recently obtained free will, the ability to make his own decisions. This series has a lot of potential to make it back onto my top 10 list, but as of right now, I think I'm very comfortable with where it is sitting. Now that we have the honorable mentions out of the way, here is my number 10. You have most definitely heard of this series. It is one of the most popular fantasy series of all time. They are classics, and in my opinion, they are timeless stories. That being said, I understand why they are not as popular today as they were when they were published, because the world has moved on. And the belief systems and morals that are central to these books are no longer in style, so to speak. And I'm talking about C.S. Lewis's The Chronicles of Narnia. You probably read these books as children. I did not read them until I was 20, 21, and then I reread them the following year. I loved these stories. I thought they were so playful. There's a lot of wisdom and wit hidden throughout. I love C.S. Lewis's writing style. I read these books in quick succession, and I love talking to people about them. I read these when I was still in college, and I was taking a religious studies course, and a lot of people were also reading these books. I had such a great time, and that is why these books have so much staying power for me. I have so much nostalgia when I think of this series. That being said, I believe I enjoy talking about these books way more than I enjoyed reading them. It's all about the discussions. It's all about the debate surrounding these books. And it'll be a sad day indeed when the Chronicles of Narnia is no longer in my top 10, but it just barely makes the cut. On any given day, any of the honorable mentions could have replaced this book at the number 10 spot, but today, I'm feeling nostalgic. At the number 9 spot, we have a series that I'm almost afraid to mention because those that are familiar with this series, they are going to instantly judge me. And I'm not going to lie, I am a little embarrassed, but I can't hide who I am. And I love this series, unironically, and I can't wait to finish it. It is ongoing, and I'm talking about Robert Bevan's Critical Failure series. This is such a rude, crude, immature, lowbrow lit RPG, and I say that in the best way. I love listening to these books, particularly listening to the amazing narrator for the audiobooks, and just turning my brain off and having a good time and laughing. It tells the story of a group of friends who get sucked into the Dungeons and Dragons world that is called Caverns and Creatures in these books. And it's so stupid. And it has me laughing out loud, tears in my eyes laughing. I love the characters. I love the humor. I'm a person that I very much miss the era of Hollywood where we had humorous movies like Hangover, Hot Rod, Superbad, This Is the End. I love that type of lowbrow, crude humor. And if you're like me and you love that stupid type of humor, I think you will love these books. But I'm not going to recommend them to you because if you don't like them and you think they're stupid, I don't want that to reflect badly on me. But I'm saying I love Critical Failures and I'm proud of it, and I can't wait to see what Robert Bevan does with the rest of this series. I'm on book 5 and I'm having such a good time. At the number 8 spot, we have a quartet that I'm surprised made the cut, and I'm talking about Peter McLean's War for the Rose Crown Quartet. I have a lot of mixed feelings about this series because I love the first 3 installments immensely, and the 4th installment let me down. I found it very underwhelming. I found the plot rushed, and it was a very dissatisfying reading experience. But I love the first 3 installments so much, but it was so frustrating at the time. And if you would have asked me right when I finished the series what I thought about it, I would have said it was a waste of time. But I constantly find myself thinking back to the reading experience, remembering the characters, remembering certain scenes and certain lines of dialogue. And I remember those things very fondly, and I'm willing to overlook a lackluster ending. I'm in the minority opinion. A lot of people had no problem with the ending. I did, but the first three installments are masterful. I would be very surprised if this series was still in my top 10 in 2026. But the characterization is top notch. I love the political intrigue. I loved the gangs fighting each other. I love the supporting cast of characters. There was a lot of cathartic moments. I believe I cried 3 times throughout this series, and I love a story that makes me cry. I hope I read some series that I don't have such conflicted feelings about in 2026, but as of right now, this is at the number 8 spot, and I'm comfortable where it's at. Number 7 on this list is very precariously placed because I've heard that the third and final installment of this trilogy is not on the same level as the first 2 installments. And that has me worried because I've absolutely loved the first 2 installments. And I'm talking about Anthony Ryan's Covenant of Steel trilogy. This is a bit of a hidden gem. Anthony Ryan is known for his other series. He's also known for having his series start off very strongly and the plot stories kind of fizzling out. And I fear that's what's going to happen with the Covenant of Steel. I'm going to be reading The Traitor. I'm going to be starting it in the next 2 weeks or so. And I'm worried because the first 2 installments have been such a home run, but there's so much ground to be covered for the third installment, and I fear Anthony Ryan's going to have to rush. This series checks a lot of my boxes. There's political intrigue, there's humor, there's a grimdark tone, there's interesting conversations to be had about religion, religious fundamentalism, religious movements, Reformation, revolution. It's such an interesting story. It depicts religious fanaticism in such a realistic, terrifying way. And the tone of these books is very pessimistic, very skeptical of religion, but it is still very respectful. There's still some room for doubt, there's still some room for hope. So far, Anthony Ryan has really been walking a tightrope of this series between skeptic and faithful, between like religion is bad and religion is a force for good. I'm not sure where this series is going to end, but I love Alan Scribe, our protagonist. I love the way the story is told, how we're reading Alan Scribe's notes because he's a scribe from his point of view of all these historical events happening. And sometimes what he sees and writes down is not what the official historical record says happens. There's a lot of interesting commentary about how history is determined by those in power, by the victors, by those who decide what history was, because they have access to the information. This series is a little meta. I absolutely love it. I'm nervous for the ending, but I can't wait to see where the story goes. Hopefully this series is still in my top 10 list in 2026. Series number 6 on this list is a series I never hear talked about here on BookTube, and that is a damn shame because it's from an author that's brought up fairly often, but never for this series. And I'm talking about the Impossible Times trilogy by Mark Lawrence. You've probably heard of his Book of the Ancestor trilogy. You've probably heard of his Library trilogy that has been taking BookTube Book Talk by storm. But Mark Lawrence wrote a very fun, very engaging, very cathartic science fiction YA thriller in The Impossible Times. The first installment is One Word Kill, and the book opens up with our main character being given a terminal cancer diagnosis. Things aren't looking good. He's lost hope, but then he bumps into himself from the future, and his future self tells him, "You will survive if these things happen. But this person that you love, something's going to happen to them if you don't change some things about your past." So a lot of interesting things are happening because he doesn't want to change the future because he knows he survives, but he doesn't want to lose this person that he loves. So it's a very interesting dynamic. And we encounter, multiple timelines. There's a lot of paradoxes. There's some time travel wizardry happening that I don't quite understand. Mark Lawrence is a scientist by trade, and you could tell when you read these books. That being said, they are so digestible. They are so much fun. The Impossible Times is unlike anything else Mark Lawrence has ever written. These books are dripping with nostalgia. They are truly a love letter to the 80s. If you are a big fan of Dungeons and Dragons, Coming of Age, Stranger Things, the power of friendship, I think you'll really love these books. These books are marketed as YA, and I'm not sure I entirely agree. I think you'll get so much more out of Impossible Times if you're a little bit more mature. I think those that have experienced tragedy and heartbreak and great loss, I think those are the type of people that'll feel such great catharsis, that will feel such a great kinship with the characters in these books. They're cathartic, but it's not cheesy cathartic. It's bittersweet cathartic, which is my favorite flavor of catharsis. This trilogy, it's hard to talk about without getting into any spoilers, but they're so short and bite-sized. Give them a try. If you've loved Mark Lawrence's other works, I think you'll really enjoy The Impossible Times. Cracking the top 5, we have another trilogy by Mark Lawrence, but this time it's his Red Queen's War trilogy. I loved this series. It is one of the first series I finished as an adult, and it really set the bar for me as a reader. I love humor. I love grim, dark settings. I love a protagonist with some issues. I love a protagonist with some great weakness. And what is Yarlin's weakness? He is a selfish coward, a selfish, immature coward that'll do anything to avoid conflict, that'll do anything to just waste his time, gamble, chase after women. He's a bit of a loser. What we get in the Red Queen's War is one of my favorite character arcs in all of fiction. The contrast between the first and final passage is so beautiful. Yarlin has great triumphs and failures, ups and downs. He has moments of great bravery and moments of extreme cowardice. He's a very human protagonist. At times he is despicable, but understandably so. Because I feel like a lot of us, when the going gets tough, when stuff hits the fan, when life gets hard, when things are scary, we all have some cowardice in us. And Yarlin is just willing to acknowledge it. So when he does have moments of bravery, we know it's not because he's fearless. We know that's just because he's dealing with his fear. And I don't want to get too into it because I don't want to spoil anything. But Yarlin's character development is the main selling point for this trilogy for me. The other selling point for this series is, if you loved Mark Lawrence's Broken Empire trilogy, this series takes place during the same timeline in the same world as it. So you get a more complete picture of the world that Mark Lawrence debuted in the Broken Empire, and I loved reading these series at the same time. I read book 1, book 1, book 2, book 2, book 3, book 3. It was a great experience. They really paint a complete picture of that world. Number 4 on the list is Blake Crouch's Wayward Pines. I loved this trilogy. It was such a fun time. It was so mysterious. I loved the twists and turns. I loved how confusing it was at times. I loved being thrown right into the middle of things and not knowing what's happening. It's a very disorienting read, but the pacing is so breakneck that even though you're confused, you are just being dragged along for the ride. The series starts off throwing mystery after mystery, puzzle after puzzle at the reader, and it's such an engaging read. Every installment of this trilogy ends off on a cliffhanger that you'll just feel the need to devour the next installment. That's what happened to me. Every installment answers some questions, but presents even more questions to the reader. I love following the puzzles. I love trying to see where all the conspiracies and paradoxes and false turns lead or don't lead. I found the ending of this trilogy so cathartic. I did not understand how Blake Crouch was going to end this trilogy in a way that made sense, but when he did it, it was like a magic trick. I never thought of it. It made perfect sense. It's open-ended but also cathartic. It truly had a masterful ending, unlike anything else I've ever read. Blake Crouch, he's known for writing thrilling stories. But Wayward Pines is more than just thrilling, and there's a reason why it's at the number 4 spot. And I think it's going to be in my top 10 list for the foreseeable future. Maybe in a few years it'll be knocked off, but that's not anytime soon. My top 3 favorite series are a little basic, but I make no apologies. At the number 3 spot, we have a classic. It's on everyone's top 10 list. Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson's Wheel of Time. 4.4 million words, and I'm not even halfway there. But I've loved the journey so far. I've taken a bit of a hiatus in 2025. I needed some time to breathe. But I'm returning to the Wheel of Time with a vengeance in 2026. I may not finish it next year, but I will definitely be finishing it in 2027. Wheel of Time inhabits the Goldilocks zone. Not too grim dark, not too traditional fantasy. The story is epic in scope. It's such a big story with such a giant cast of characters, and I know it just gets more and more complicated. I know that the middle of the series is called The Slog, and I'm not excited to be entering into that era of the series, but I need to see where the story ends. I've heard from many people that the post book depression you get when you finish this series is unlike anything else. And I want to feel that pain. I want to feel this journey. I want to see the power creep. I want to see where these characters go, where the stories end off. I want to experience this literary journey in all its cheesiness and silliness and epicness, because this series is truly a mixed bag. It's a bit of a chore to read sometimes, but I can't wait to jump back into this series in 2026. It's at the number 3 spot, and I think it'll get lower, then it'll get higher. Who knows? Right now, number 3 is where it's at. At the number 2 spot, we have a series from my favorite author, and I'm talking about the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. This series, I'm a bit nervous about it, if I'm being honest. It's very precariously placed at number 2, because from my understanding, book 4 is the strongest installment on the series. And I'm about to start book 4. Wizard and Glass is on the agenda. I'm going to finish it before the end of the year. But I've heard that the series is downhill from there. So I'm wondering if this series will even be in my top 5 next year. Only time will tell. The Dark Tower, it's a fever dream. It's hard to predict. It's hard to understand. I don't even completely understand what's happening. I've read 3 books, and I've heard that it only gets more complicated, more convoluted. But it's such a good time. It's such an engaging read. I love our characters. I love Roland and Eddie, Susanna, Jake, Oi. Such memorable characters. I can really feel and see and hear all these characters when they're talking and they're engaging with each other. Stephen King is such a great character writer, and I'm a characters first reader. The Dark Tower, it's a bit confusing, a bit meandering, but I'm sure even if the series ends on a bit of a low point, that I'm going to think fondly, remember fondly the experience I've had so far. The man in black fled across the desert, and I'm following the journey, and we're going to see where it ends. And finally, at the number 1 spot, the reigning champ of 2025, my favorite series of all time as of this moment, Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinniman. Perhaps it is sacrilege to put this series at the number 1 spot. I must admit, this series is so unserious at times. It tells the story of a former Coast Guard member who is fighting monsters on an intergalactic game show, accompanied by his ex-girlfriend's award-winning Persian cat. It is absurd. It is ridiculous. It is silly and so unserious, and sometimes I'm embarrassed to say that this series is my favorite series ever. I try to pitch this series to my friends, and they roll their eyes. They think I'm just pulling their leg. But I feel so strongly about Dungeon Crawler Carl. I love how heartwarming this story is. It gives me such strong anime vibes. It reminds me of the time when I was younger and I was watching Naruto. And I was watching young people using the power of friendship to beat such long odds. The story is epic and unique, but still so familiar in its essence. It has amazing characterization. I love Carl. I love Donut. There are moments of great tragedy and sacrifice and sadness. There are epic character deaths. There's a lot of absurdity. There's a lot of heartfelt things. There's a lot of commentary about exploitation and capitalism and waste and suffering and monetizing people's suffering. This series checks so many boxes. I'm not going to lie. I initially went into this series expecting to make fun of it. I thought it was beneath me. I thought my tastes were too refined. In the first 3 installments, they were just good fun. I loved the audiobooks, and they were just a good listen in the car type of read. And then I read book 4 and 5 and 6, and I'm reading book 7 right now, and I'm so emotionally invested. The series has made me cry 3 times, and considering the premise and the setting and the tone, that's just such a crazy feat to me. Everyone is talking about Dungeon Crawler Carl here on BookTube. And a lot of you guys are wondering if, it's just all hype, if all the praise is warranted. And I don't think anybody else would put this series in their top spot. but I truly believe that's where it belongs. And I think Matt Damon would really have to mess things up for this series to drop out of the top 5. It is ongoing, and I don't care. I want to buy the graphic novels. I'm going to watch a TV show when it comes out. I I have such strong feelings about Dungeon Crawler Carl. Safe to say, I'm a Dungeon Crawler Carl superfan, and I am following this series until the wheels fall off. I make no apologies. It's in the number 1 spot. That's where it's staying for at least the foreseeable future. Matt Dinniman has written the series that I think is just perfect for me, and I think it deserves all the hype and more. So, what do you guys think of my rankings? What series would you recommend to me? Leave them in the comments below. Do you think any of these series are rated too highly on my list? What do you think of my taste? Are they trash? I'd love to hear it. Thank you for watching this video, and I will talk to you next time.